here's exactly why your toxic relationships can't end well. And probably by the time you get to the end of this video, you're going to not only have a clear path in terms of why these specific toxic relationships you've had in the past can't end well, but you're also going to have a framework to use, to utilize, to apply in order to help you move forward with the more positive relationships that you have, or so that you can have way more positive relationships. Now, you might be asking yourself, Samuel, like, what qualifies you to talk about this? And the reality is, I'm probably one of the least qualified people to talk about this from an academic standpoint, okay? My undergraduate degree was in computing and statistics. The first master's I studied was a master's in statistics. I then studied a PGCE, which is a postgraduate certificate in education, which basically qualifies you to be a teacher. And that was in secondary and A-level mathematics. And then I studied my second master's, which was a master's in teaching. So none of my academic qualifications qualify me to talk about relationships and toxic relationships. And my channel is not really about that. But the reason why I'm talking about this is because it's so fundamental to everything and anything we do. If you're someone who's been following me for a while, you would have heard me talk about my sourcing blueprint. And in the sourcing blueprint, I talk about what I call the 4M formula, which starts with marketing. The only way you're going to get great property deals going forward, the only way you're going to do better business going forward is by marketing. But when you start marketing, what happens? People hear about what you do. And my definition, my simple definition of marketing is tell everybody what you do, right? So when you start telling everybody what you do, guess what happens? People hear about what you do and they reach out to you. Now, when they reach out to you, you now have a relationship that you have to start managing. And that's the second M in the 4M formula. So you start managing these relationships, and straight after you start managing the relationships, you then get to be pressed or pushed towards the third M in the 4M formula. So the first one is marketing, tell everybody what you do. Then people start reaching out to you. Then you start the managing of those relationships. But whilst you're managing the relationships of someone who reached out to you because you told everyone what you do, we're rhyming already here, what happens is they are going to inform you of the problem, the predicament, or the specific barrier that they're facing. And as they reveal that to you, you now have the foundational pieces, to start measuring. And that's the third M in the 4M formula. So you start marketing, telling everybody what you do. Then people start reaching out to you. So you start managing those relationships. And from managing those relationships, you then start having the variables that you need to measure, the crux of the situation that you need to measure. So if, for example, like me, you're doing deals in business and property and people reach out to you and say, hey, Samuel, I've got a similar problem to what you were marketing about or talking about or did that video about, etc. Then what will happen is they'll start telling you about their problem specifically, and their unique specific problem is what you use to start measuring. And effectively, when you measure, what you're looking at is where's the win-win, where's the problem they're dealing with, and where's the solution that potentially is there that they maybe can't see, or maybe they can see, but they're not confident enough to pursue, right? And then from measuring, what happens is you get to the final stage of the 4M formula, which is the ability to start maturing that transaction, taking that deal from something on paper, from something on a spreadsheet, from something that's in a discussion in terms of the relationship you are managing and the things you are measuring into money, like revenue, income in your bank account, because you've been able to take it from marketing to managing, through measuring to maturing. Okay, so that's the 4M formula. Now, if you look at that 4M formula, and yes, there's people who have bought my online course and gone through that to understand this in greater detail than I can explain in this short video. But if you look at the 4M formula, you very quickly start to realize that it starts with marketing and then it moves to managing. And one of the key fundamental kind of underlying paths in the marketing and the managing is working with other people. I remember meeting Grant Cardone for the first time in 2019 and him saying a statement which has really stuck with me since I heard him say it. And that is, strangers have everything you need, okay? Now, if you're someone like me who reads the Bible, throughout the book of Proverbs, there's multiple verses which talk to that same conceptual idea, basically saying that, you know, the poor person is the person who doesn't roast what he has taken in hunting, okay? You know, like if you've done all of the work to go hunting or to start marketing or to tell people what you do, like the person who's going to stay poor is the person who then doesn't manage that relationship, the person who hasn't done the last part of the art, okay? So I say all that to say relationships are fundamental and foundational when it comes to succeeding in business. Relationships are fundamental and foundational when it comes to succeeding in property. Relationships are fundamental and foundational when it comes to succeeding in life. And that kind of is why I guess I have to talk about this, whether I think I'm the most qualified or the least qualified person to talk about this. Now, here's a question, right, that I'm going to throw out there right now. If you are watching this right now and getting value, I would love you in the chat, in the comments, okay? Here's to answer this question. Who do you think is the kind of person who is qualified to talk on this, okay? Because in my head, like, as I was thinking about doing this video with you, I was thinking to myself, like, I don't even know who would be the best person to speak about this. Would it be a human psychologist? Would it be a therapist? Would it be someone who gets into the deep dives and depths of people's mind? Or would it be someone who deals with people every single day in terms of like business, as I do, in order to help those people get paid? Okay, so again, this is not me saying, you know, I think I'm qualified. This is me really saying, I don't know who would be the best qualified person. So let's jump into this. So if you've been asking yourself, whether it's on a relational perspective, I guess that's the word I'm looking for. If you've been asking yourself whether it's on a relational perspective or whether it's on a business perspective, why is it that you have toxic relationships? Then, you know, that's maybe like a video for another day. Maybe that video might not even be in my remit. But if you've got deeper than that, and you've recognized, yes, there are some toxic relationships in your life. There are some toxic relationships in your business. There are some toxic relationships that you've quote unquote acquired, okay, if we can even use that language. You might be asking yourself, how comes they don't ever end well? How comes they don't tend to end well? Okay, and I'm going to break down for you what I believe are 3 of the core reasons why they tend to not end well. And whilst doing that, what I will be doing is I'll be drawing from some of my life experience in terms of being able to tell stories from maybe relationships that I've had, and also aspects of business relationships I've had, in order to assist kind of like clearly paint the picture of what we're talking about, like in this video. So the first reason why I have found that toxic relationships don't end well is basically because what toxic relationships do, in essence, the first thing that they do is they disrupt the natural flow of things. Okay, so I want you to think about that. Okay, a relationship between 2 people, which is a toxic relationship, will always and often have a foundation of disrupting natural flow. Okay, so the challenge many people have is they don't know what natural flow is before they get into that toxic relationship. So for example, if you're an early stage entrepreneur, if we use that language, right, and you're just starting your business, and let's say you're just breaking into your first like 6-figure year or something like that, you're kind of really early stage, right? What will happen a lot of the time is, if you don't know what your natural flow is of business, if you don't know the seasons of business, if you don't know kind of what you have to do to market, what you have to do to manage, if you don't know the intricacies of what you have to do to measure and what you have to do to mature, if you're not clear on your own business quote unquote sourcing blueprint, then what happens is, because you don't have a blueprint, any single relationship can start to disrupt the natural flow of how you do things, because you're not clear on how you do things. So you can start doing things in a way which starts generating revenue for you and starts getting you paid, but because you're not very clear on the natural flow of quote unquote business, in the example I'm using, what happens is a toxic relationship can come in, or a relationship can come in and start disrupting that natural flow. And by virtue of it disrupting the natural flow, what's happening is you become unstuck. You become unable to continue to produce the kind of results that you desire to produce. And as a result, over time, what happens is you end up in toxicity, like basically, and that can obviously manifest itself in various different ways. Okay, and maybe you can let me know in the comments any way that you think toxicity can show up in a relationship, and again, if you want, you can focus on business. It's totally up to you. But that's what was really like a big thing in my mind when I was thinking about why toxic relationships don't end well. So in business, for example, I'm thinking of a specific relationship I had where it was lockdown. And when the lockdown started, what happened is, in my coaching business anyway, I had a real spike. I had a real peak of clients reaching out to me. And what was interesting is, most of those clients were people who we already had kind of application coaching calls with at this time, and had deemed, okay, they were qualified to be on our coaching program. And after saying to them, hey, you're qualified, you know what, this is the commitment, this is what you're going to need to do to get in, most of those people had said, okay, no, you know what, maybe whatever, like whatever excuse they had at the time. Then 2 or 3 weeks later, the whole country, the whole world was being told, stay at home, you can't go to work, you're going to be furloughed and all of that stuff. And literally within 7 days, 8 days, 9 days, in some people's case, those people who we had done those discovery calls, exploration calls, sales calls, whatever calls you want to call them, and had told those people, yes, you can join, etc. Obviously, there were people that were turned away, but for those people that were told, yes, you can join, we saw them reaching back out to us and saying, hey, we want to jump on a program. We want to jump on a program. Like, things has changed. My circumstances have changed. Like, here, everyone in the world's circumstances changed, right? And for two people that come to mind right now as I do this video, right? Two of these people, out of the people I'm talking about, joined our program. Now, one of those people, just like, because she comes to mind very clear, she joined our program and did none of the work. She joined our program and engaged in none of the training. She joined our program and it was literally just like, whoop, silence of the lambs, right? Then this gentleman who I'm thinking about, he joined our program and he literally got what I would say at that time anyway, was standout results. Okay, he joined the program, he was in the coaching calls, he was listening to what we was coaching him on, he was doing the stuff we were telling him to do, and from doing the stuff he was telling him to do, this is super crazy. Hold on, guys. This is super crazy. Literally, my other phone is, it looks like my other phone is literally transcribing what I'm saying on this video as I'm talking. This is super crazy. I've never seen this in my life before. So they are right. Google is always listening to us. Yeah, that is super crazy because I didn't put any app on for this to do that. I don't even know what to do. That literally just shocked me. Okay, so I'm turning the phone off, right? I'm literally turning the phone off because that was super weird. All right, so this other person, this gentleman, he joins the program, and in joining the program, he produces what I would call standout results, okay? He's joining the coaching calls, doing the work, and from joining the coaching calls and doing the work, he basically buys 2 properties, okay? He secures 2 properties within, let's say, the first 4 months of being on the program. And then about a month later or 2 months later, he reaches out to my team and he says, hey guys, actually, let me add one more caveat because there was one more thing that was super interesting. So this guy goes and posts on social media, all right? And he's posting on social media, you know, I just acquired my, you know, my newest property, blah, 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 blah. Thank you, coach, Samuel, I can win, da, 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 right? So he's praising us in public, okay? Then he turns around about a month later and emails and basically says, hey, I'd like a refund. Okay, so this was kind of super confusing. We were like, yo, this guy's actually getting results better than most of the other people in his cohort. And he's now asking for a refund. Like, wait, what? Right? So it was kind of weird, right? So this for me, first and foremost, I'm defining as a toxic relationship. Okay, and it's already toxic. It's like what most people do is they wait until there's back and forth. They wait until there's arguments. They wait until there's all this other stuff that it doesn't have to be to determine that the relationship was toxic. Now, if you are following this thread, what you should actually realize is the relationship was toxic from when this individual was reaching out to us to ask to join a program that he had already said he doesn't want to join for whatever reason, or he couldn't join for whatever reason, right? And again, this is not me saying any person who turns down an opportunity or offer that you make to them becomes toxic if they come back to you. That's not what this is saying. But when you recognize that the sense of urgency around what you have to offer for someone is not perceived by that person until a world-changing event occurs, then you should understand that that person is what we generally call a sometimeish person, which means, yeah, they might be on it right now because of what's happening, but when the effects of what's happening kind of simmer down, that person is going to alter their reality. Why? Because their reality is being altered by external factors rather than internal factors. So at that time, let me add, at that time, I guess I would have to put my hands up and say, I'm guilty of the same, okay? 1, because you get what you attract, but 2, because when that individual came back to us to share that he was now interested in joining the program, I didn't say, hold on guys, no. Like, we can't do that because internally XYZ. Instead, I said externally, okay, cool, he's ready to jump on, let's go. But I knew that the external factor was the lockdown, okay? And someone might argue, well, Samuel, you were just being kind and being open, but then obviously I could say the same about him, right? So it is what it is. I'll hold my hands up and say I'm guilty too. But nonetheless, okay, that is a toxic relationship, and it will do all of us well. It will do you well. It will do me well to be people who spot toxicity early, because the earlier you spot toxicity, the sooner you can combat it, the sooner you can do something about it, the sooner you can make sure it doesn't affect you, okay? Or even produce what the second stage or layer that I'm going to talk about in a moment is anyway. So the first thing that happens in toxicity is that it disrupts the natural flow of things, okay? So with this individual asking for a refund, the refund request was not the disruption of the natural flow, but the psychological impact that had on me at that time, because I believe that was the first person who had ever asked whilst during any of our coaching programs for a refund. So that really hit me hard at that time. And I remember like mentally just not knowing like kind of what I did wrong or kind of what our team had done wrong. And that was a big thing on me, right? And I had a call, and I'm going to share this because again, I'm not about painting a beautiful portrait of problems without providing principles or solutions, right? So one of the things that was a great unlock for me when I was going through that situation is like, I was so distraught mentally at the time that I just didn't really have the energy or capacity to take on new clients. So that hit me kind of hard, right? And that particular gentleman, like, he might watch this video right now and be thinking, wow, I never knew I had that impact. I don't know. He might be watching that video and be watching this video and be thinking, yes, like, I'm so glad I had that impact. I don't know, right? But the reason I'm bringing it up is because it really challenged me. It really challenged me because he was the first person to ask for a refund. It really challenged me because he had hit out the park results. It really challenged me because I would never have expected someone who had done so well with the stuff we had shown him to have requested a refund, right? So long story short, what got me out of that funk at the time, that toxicity, was a coaching call, all right? I had a coaching call at the time with a brand new coach to me, a coach that I'd never worked with prior, etc. I was talking to a specific consultant that I had brought on board to our business to help us with our Facebook advertising. And again, Amelia, shout out to you. And as I was talking to her, I basically shared with her my challenge and what I was going through. And she said to me, you just need to speak to a coach, which I kind of already knew, but I didn't have a coach in place at the time who I thought I could discuss that with. So Imelda, I can't remember if Imelda recommended someone to me or if someone else recommended the person who was recommended to me. But long story short, I was recommended to have a coaching call with a lady named Harriet, right? And Harriet literally had one call with me. It's the first time we ever spoke, right? It was like literally kind of like an impromptu call. We had this call and Harriet literally changed my life, okay? And the reason I say that is because she changed the way I perceived the situation. And she did that by asking me some very powerful questions at the time. And I'll share with you the questions so you can get a flavor or feel of it for yourself. The first question that Harriet asked me is, what percentage of your coaching clients and students is this individual in your business, right? And I was like, he's one guy out of multiple people that we serve currently, right? And she was like, so are you telling me that you are actually having thoughts about changing your whole business in terms of how you offer services, how you offer coaching, how you deliver your training because of a 0.4% or because of a 1% out of 100% of what you do? Like, I think she even went as far as Harriet asking me, how many other clients do you have who basically are happy with your results, okay? And I was like, multiple clients before this client even joined, right? And that was the shift. Like, the shift was me getting out of the fog and realizing that this particular individual had come and disrupted our natural flow, okay? So toxicity 101, look out for, spot when, see when people are disrupting your natural flow. Because if someone's disrupting your natural flow in a negative way, let's add that because that's very important, then there is 9 times out of 10 an indication that that's a toxic relationship. And I'm talking about clients, I'm talking about landlords, I'm talking about sellers, I'm talking about investors, I'm talking about any relationship you have where in business or in the development of your cash flow creation, you're seeing that the relationship is toxic because the person or the people are attempting to disrupt your natural flow. Guys, that is time to say, I got to go. So disrupting the natural flow is the first one. Now, I'm slightly kind of feeling like this video might end up being too long, so I might have to just condense the time frames. Let's go. The second one, Okay, the second one, through means of the disruption of natural flow, usually what happens is there ends up being damaging, okay, of the natural form, okay? So damaging of the natural form, how does this happen? What? Well, the reason this happens is because if you've got a flow that works a certain way, like if you think of a river, right? And that river is disrupted. So let's say, for example, a dam is placed in that river, okay? So the moment you have a natural flow disrupted, if it's disrupted for long enough, it creates damage, okay? It creates damage. Now you might be thinking, Samuel, damage, how does it create damage? I'll give you a quick example. What water does, and we're using water as an analogy here, what water does when it hits rock, or when it hits sand, or when it hits brick, is it literally dislodges it, okay? And we have basically the process of erosion that takes place. So water, as soft as it is, as gentle as it is, as relaxed as it is, water can produce erosion over time when it just keeps on hitting something. So if you now imagine a whole river and you imagine putting a dam in the middle of that river, the rest of that river, which doesn't have water in anymore, obviously may become damaged because it doesn't have the natural water, the nourishment, the nutrients that are in that water, the minerals that are in that water. So that's that part. But then the part that does have the water, through means of the water being there, that water can start to erode the sidelines, the river banks, etc. Okay, and what you now have is damaging. Okay, so you've got the disrupting of the natural flow, and then you've got the damaging of the natural form. Okay, and this is where most people spot toxic relationships, because for most people, when they start feeling damage or experiencing damage, that's when they're like, something's wrong here. Like, this landlord is taking advantage of me. They are using me to coach them, and taking advantage of the fact that I know stuff that they should know, rather than them just paying me for a coaching call, which is what someone who wasn't a landlord, who I was managing their property in my, let's say, management or rent to rent portfolio, would have done. Okay, so you've got clients out there who maybe are booking coaching calls with you and maybe paying thousands of pounds, hundreds of pounds, whatever you charge in that regard. And then you've got landlords who you're managing their property, and maybe you're just making £1,500 a month from their properties. So you think of it like that. If you are making 1,000 a month from a property, and let's say you've got that property for 5 years, okay, over 5 years, that's £12,000 times 5, that's £60,000 roughly, right? So that's what that contract is worth to you over the lifetime of the contract, or the 5 years of the contract. Now, the thing that's interesting about that is that's 12,000 a year, that's 60,000 over the 5 years, and over those 5 years, there are going to be ancillary expenses, like, for example, the rent you're paying to the landlord, the fixtures and fittings you need to put in, etc. So that relationship is a separate relationship. Now, when that landlord starts kind of knocking on your head, knocking on your intellectual property, and start trying to extrapolate from you core ideas, key ideas about building their portfolio, core ideas, key ideas about ramping up their cash flow, core ideas, key ideas, which typically you would have reserved for your coaching clients. Typically you would have reserved for people that are paying you to receive that. And here's the thing that's interesting. A coaching client might pay you £3,495 for a 30-minute call. And in that 30-minute call, yes, you will share with them how they can generate an additional £35,000. But here's the difference. They're paying that £3,495 for that 30 minutes. And the margin for you as a business owner versus the margin of the £1,000 per month is completely different. Okay? The revenue, the experience is completely different. And when you find people who are allowing you to generate £1,000 a month, £60,000 over 5 years, who are trying to tap into that side of your business without paying, without doing the right thing, without Matthew chapter 13, verse 44. And for those of you who don't know what that verse is, you can go check it out and read it. Like, that's when you start experiencing maybe damage. That's when it's gone beyond the disrupting the natural flow. And you can see, even in the example I've just given you, that is a disruption to the natural flow, because this landlord who's having a rent-to-rent relationship with you, or a management relationship to you, has a specific relationship to you. When they start disrupting the natural flow and attempting to be impromptu unpaid coaching client, now what you've got is you've got a disruption of the natural flow, which for most people you can now see, oh, I see how this will cause damage. Okay, and that's literally what happens next. You end up having damaging the natural form. Okay, so the natural way you do things, it ends up being damaged. So if you don't spot toxicity in a relationship from the initial stage, okay, from the initial stage of disruption of the natural flow, always look out for toxicity in a relationship through means of damaging of the natural form, okay, because that's another way that things happen. Now, the third way to attempt to try and keep this super succinct is when you have diluting, okay, diluting of what I would call the native formula, okay? So diluting of the native formula, how does that work? Well, if you take a glass, for example, and you put some dirt, toxicity, right? You put some dirt inside. What will happen is slowly we are diluting that natural water, okay? So I've got some water here, right? And if you put something in, so sometimes we put electrolytes in our water, for example, and what we do, because in a way we're diluting it positively with electrolytes, when you pour electrolytes in, if they're colored electrolytes, it's going to change the whole color of the whole water, but it depends on how much of the electrolytes you put in, right? Which is the same as if you put dirt in water, it depends on how much of the dirt you put in, because with each piece of dirt you're putting in, it's diluting the water more and more. So the more dirt, the more diluted, and over time, this thing stops looking like water, clear and pure, and it starts looking like the dirt, all right? Dark, dingy, and no longer transparent. Let me use that terminology. So this is like the third layer of toxicity you will find in your business relationships. And that is where there's diluting of the native formula. There's the native way things are supposed to be done. H2O ends up having new components inside, which we don't know, okay? So these are effectively, and I'm apologizing because I don't know if this video is getting too long. You've got to let me know in the comments below. But if this video is too long, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna wrap up the video now because I feel like it's getting too long. But you guys let me know in the comments below if you want me to take this into a part 2, okay? And in the part 2, what I'll do is I'll share basically how we overcome all of these challenges, all right? And like I said, because I don't feel like I'm maybe the most qualified person to do this video, this is part of the reason why I don't want to be talking about this for too long. But in essence, the 3 things we have to look out for in toxic relationships in our businesses, predominantly if you're in a property investment business, but in our businesses. And the reason I keep bringing to the fore the property aspect is not only because it's my jam, right? But also because in the field of property, which is the same as all businesses, you're going to have multiple different stakeholders, okay? And by multiple different stakeholders, what I mean is, if you're doing a management business, you're going to have landlords who you serve, right? If you're in an acquisition business, which most people progress to anyway, you're going to have sellers that you engage with / serve. If you're working with agents, you're going to have agents that you serve, okay? And then on the other side, if you are raising capital, you're going to have investors that you serve. So as someone who's in business, we typically have so many stakeholders that we serve that it's important to understand and be able to recognize when relationships are toxic, because there are so many relationships that your business is dependent on, or so many relationships that we can make our business dependent on, okay? So this is the reason why I keep coming back to the property aspect of this, because it's so important, all right? Now, I'm gonna do this before I wrap up the video because I think otherwise I'm not doing what I should be doing. I'm gonna share with you the 3 things we can do if we suspect that there's toxicity in a relationship. And again, if this video is of value or helpful, let me know in the comments below. And what I'll do is in the other video, if I make another video for this, if you guys want that, if you want another video in this regard, I will break down each of these 3 as deeply, at least, as I've broken down the 3 things we can spot, okay? So the first thing we can spot if we're dealing with effectively a toxic relationship is a disrupting of the normal flow. The second thing is a damaging of the natural form. And then the third thing is a diluting of the native form or framework or formula, okay? So if we spot those things, we should recognize, yo, this is a toxic relationship, okay? So what do? Here's 3 things we can do. We need to diagnose. So I've given you the tools to be able to diagnose, because I've kind of given you the framework or the wording for you to be able to say, okay, cool, I can see here that this is disrupting our natural flow, or I can see here that this is actually damaging the natural form, or I can see here that this is actually diluting our native frame. Okay, so when you understand that this is diluting the native formula, or you can understand that this is damaging the natural form, or you can see that, hold on a minute, this is actually disrupting the natural flow, you can say, I've been able to diagnose this. Like, I can see this is a problem. Okay. Second step is to detoxify. Start your detoxification process. Now, again, I don't want to go deep into this because of time, but the second stage is to start to detoxify. Okay. We want to eliminate, we want to reduce the toxicity, and ideally we want to get to a place where we can eliminate the toxicity. All right, so if we can get all the toxicity out of the system, we are in the best place possible. Okay, and just so it's said, that doesn't just mean, you know, go fire your clients. It doesn't just mean that. That is one of the ways, but it doesn't just mean fire the clients or fire the investors, etc. Like, I've got coaching clients who are fired investors who are committing, or who are pledging or committing over 100, I think in one case over £300,000 of investment into their business. Okay, and I've coached clients who have literally fired their investors and said, you know what, we're not going to take your money because of XYZ. Okay, so first stage is diagnose there's toxicity. Second stage is get to a place where you feel comfortable to start detoxifying your ecosystem or your system. And then the third stage is develop. You have to develop beyond the toxicity. Okay, so I pray you got tons of value from this video. I pray you're not watching this video thinking, Samuel, what do you know? You can't speak on this topic. But you've actually seen like some hopefully deep insights from what I've shared, and you're recognizing how this can be a game changer for you in your business, whether you're a coach, whether you're a consultant, whether you're someone who's actually creating cash flow through means of a different kind of business. You might be an influencer, you might be an educator, you might be someone who's an investor, you might be an entrepreneur. Any of those four categories, guys, I'm telling you, if you understand what I've taught in this video, what I've shared in this video, you will be best placed to move further faster in your future. So with that being said, whatever your key takeaway was, let me know in the comments. If you like this video, hit like. If you want to hear more stuff like this, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification, so every single time I drop a video, you'll be notified. And if this value in this video was something you think can help someone else, then share this video with that person specifically. Like, I'm not into that whole bulk share, like, hey, I just shared it out on the internet. Like, if there's a specific person that comes to your mind whilst you're going through this video content, and you're like, you know what, Samuel, that was super valuable, I want to share this with Tracy, or that was super valuable, I want to share this with Jeffrey, or that was super valuable, I want to share this with Amber, then share it with that specific person and just say, hey, I was thinking of you when I watched this video, I wanted to share this with you to assist you to move further faster in your business as well. And the reason I share this is because content sharing is one of the greatest ways to actually build and develop relationships, because it causes me and that other person I'm sharing it with to have common ground in terms of content and context. So with that being said, Sammy I Can Win signing out. Love you. Looking forward to seeing you on the next one. Let's go.